this video is hilarious because there can be so much like juxtaposition between us talking about real shit to cute somewhere.
Oh my goodness.
Welcome back to the channel. If it's your first time here ever, welcome for the first time. I am here with Raina and we are going to shop Stand for Justice, which is a fundraiser in support of Black Lives Matter. All of the proceeds from anything here are going directly to different charities and causes for BLM, as well as a donation jar, which they've already raised over 2 million linden, which is like blowing my mind because that is over 10 grand just from donations alone. But there are also lots of stores, creators, and designers that have created items so you can shop, shop on and do some good and, help with all these donations.
Well, today I guess you're here for an important conversation. We're going to have some really transparent conversations around race, BLM, and unconscious bias.
Yes. So be prepared. Just, we ask that you come here with an open mind. I feel like we have the kind of community that is comfortable having very transparent, sometimes uncomfortable conversations. So, I encourage you guys to drop comments below, keep the conversation going, and of course, from a place of love and respect where this is all coming from. So, I hope you enjoy the shop with me. We're gonna spend as much as we can. Let's get into it. So they have a donation counter. So far they've got a ton of donations. So they have over 2 million linden in donations. So in US dollars, that's about $9,000, which is insane. Like, it's just really nice and surprising to see, what's really possible in Second Life. Like, that's 10 grand going to donations. And look, all creators are welcome. All right, so this opened June 5th. So within a short amount of time, they've actually been able to raise about 10,000 linden. Stand for Justice's fundraising effort in SL dedicated to raising funds that will be used as a split donation to Black Lives Matter, Black Visions Collective, Campaign Zero, the National Police Accountability Project, and a split bail fund benefiting 38 plus bail funds nationwide. All items will be 100% donation collected by an avatar created for this purpose, Stand for Justice SL Resident. Fundraiser will begin June 5th, 2020, and date is TBA. In addition, 15 Linden Friday creators will have the opportunity each Friday to put additional item out at 100% donation, with proceeds going towards Stand for Justice. Other BLM resources here: register to vote, Black-owned bookstores and reading lists, free Black History Month library, Black-owned businesses in SL. It's a work in progress. This is awesome, and it links to a bunch of different resources. So let's see what's here. What is this? Wow. Skybox? This is cute. Who's Chimia? I don't know what I would use a skybox for, but I want it. All right, so thank you for your purchase, and therefore your donation to the Stand for Justice in support of Black Lives fundraiser. 100% of this purchase will be donated to charities. Cute. All right, so we can ball out.
Feel it in my body, feel it in my feet. And it feels so good inside. When I hear that music, it gets me on my feet. Makes me wanna dance on.
Yesterday I was seeing all this controversy on Facebook, SL Facebook, about people who are not Black behind the avatar wearing Black avatars. And it's like, it's literally split between both people of color and non-people of color. Saying whether it's wrong or not, and a lot, I think a lot of it is one just coming from general frustration. So I think people are getting really defensive, like non-POCs are getting defensive, like I get to look however I want to look. And I think this is really, I think what we're seeing in the world generally, this is a time to listen. Like, maybe in a couple months they're not going to feel that way, but I think instead of getting defensive and making crazy posts about it, just like listen to what they say. Me personally, I don't have an issue with it. Like, I don't think, I think we come to Second Life when we create characters. I think, it's a different story when people create Black characters to be stereotypical, and, role play stereotypical black things or, derogatory things or offensive things, that's a different story. I don't think that's everyone's intention. But then there's that caveat where you have people who are coming from a Eurocentric point of view when they create black avatars. And what we see happen is, creators, Second Life itself, official channel, they will still choose those type of Eurocentric inspired black avatars over people who are black behind the avatar and creating what they feel represents them. So, it's on two hands, like using blogging as an example.
Right.
Because a lot of people are using that. But, say you have two bloggers, you have one that's white behind the avatar, one that's black behind the avatar. Naturally, there are just far more non-POC creators in SL. And I think, we're all just used to a certain standard of beauty. And I think when a lot of people create some of these black avatars from that point of view, naturally, that's what the creators may also prefer as well. Because, I've seen it too. I've seen vendors from creators that are black, but, you can tell they come from some type of Euro-inspired situation. Look at these eyes. Shut up, Bobby Glam.
I know. I was like, ooh.
Oh, wait. And I have them both.
Do you really?
Yeah. I know I have Mirage. I think I have Sway. So I think that's the same story that's in real life. And I think that's why that frustration is trickling over here, that opportunities for black people are, a bit muted and diluted. And it happens in SL, and people continue to see opportunities for black avatars, which are limited to begin with, going to people who are not black behind the avatar, because there is just a general standard of beauty that I think, different groups are more comfortable with. And, I remember when that thing happened on the Second Life, or someone called out the Second Life Instagram about not getting many people of color. And then they did, right? They immediately put someone on there. And then you go to her Instagram, and it's like, it was a very... I don't know. They have an aesthetic when they post black people. I mean, it's very different now. They're supporting BLM and they're posting all types of avatars. But they had a very specific aesthetic when it came to the type of black avatars they did post. Whether it's conscious or unconscious, we're not saying it's intentional. I think what a lot of the conversations around all of this right now is people coming to realize that a lot of this is not intentional. But yeah, they selected avatars. All of the black, that's what's crazy. Like, I went through it. I think there were like 3 that were black people or black avatars that were played by black people on their page. But when you look at all the rest of the black avatars, they were all white people behind the avatar. And it's really not, it's not like there's not enough in SL. And it's not like there's not enough that take great photos. But it's because naturally that
wasn't necessarily representing the black SL community either, though.
Right. And I think that's always the argument, like it looks like a brown, white avatar. And that's the aesthetic they go for. Look at the lithium here. Let me buy hers.
I'm lost in here.
I need to walk around. I know, I forget for these videos, I need to actually be moving. I understand why people are frustrated. And I think that's the thing. Like, I sat in on this talk yesterday, bunch of professors and just different directors. And they were, there was one that was like, I forgot where he's from. He said some middle America, very small town that had one black person his whole life growing up. So he was like, naturally, when this started happening, it was natural, right? He's from where you are.
Right.
But a lot of what he was saying was just, why is nothing for legacy? Come on, Garbaggio.
Oh, come on.
Because these are so cute.
I know.
But he was saying that, a lot of it's unconscious. He had to really change his perspective to, making it a personal goal for himself to not want to offend anyone. And if he was, to actually listen to what's offensive about it. And I think that's what happens in SL. People get like a tinkling of something that may relate to them or a criticism that may relate to them and like immediately sound off. So a lot of these like posts I'm hearing about, how dare they say I can't be a black avatar? Like, are you even listening to what's upsetting?
Right. I think there needs to be a lot of listening.
Yeah.
Taking place. Just sit with it for a minute.
Yeah.
But I've seen so many people on the real life side of things say, thank you for helping me understand where you're coming from. I used to be on this side of the fence, but now I stand with you. I'm your ally. And so it's really refreshing to see that sink in.
And it's funny, I follow this one girl I think I sent you snapshots of her. Where's my phone? I sent you snapshots of some of the posts she's making because she's upset and she's venting, and she has a huge platform, right? So she has like millions of followers, and she's being completely transparent. And she said that at the beginning of this, she was like, "I'm gonna be transparent. I'm gonna just talk about what I'm feeling." And there's so much backlash because she's expressing this. But then in the comments, there's also just people that understand. Like, you know, there are people from all walks of life, all sorts of white people that get it, and they're like, you know, I think you're allowed to be frustrated.
I saw a post that was similar to that.
Yeah.
But it was a friend of mine, a white friend and her white husband. They greeted the mailman at the door, and they had just watched some Black Lives Matter stuff, videos on TV, and they were both in tears.
Yeah.
So the husband goes out to check the mail, stops and sees the mailman. He asks, "Hey, what's wrong? Are you okay?" And he's like, "Oh, I just watched this stuff. I get it." And he's like, "Oh, they could relate and talk about it, just have a short little conversation about it." He said, "Yeah, I've had to stay away from Facebook because I started seeing people that sat down at my table not feel the same for my life and my son's life. And they just didn't get it. And it's very hurtful." And so that kind of he was expressing how he felt openly about it, and they had a nice little talk about it. But it reminded me of what you had just said.
Yeah. And even in that talk yesterday, like lots of people teared up just trying to explain it, because I think that's their frustration. And that's what I think is making them distrusting of larger groups, that, you know, we can say that historically Black people's lives haven't significantly been protected or, you know, regarded in the same light as other people. So that's what this is all about, just trying to change that. And the fact that that is controversial is, I think, you know, it's really hurting. And I think to see so many people react to just people saying, you guys, you know, generally numbers, you guys don't value my life because of the color of my skin, and the fact that people are pushing back and saying, you know, we matter too. Like, that's not, we're not saying you don't. We're saying we need to be added to that table of people that matter. And I think that's what's frustrating, and I think that's what's causing a lot of Black people not to trust, like, you know, people that have been in their lives forever. And it's hurting. Anxiety has all those skyboxes that we were looking at a couple of months ago. And I thought I bought all of these, but apparently not.
That's what I was wondering.
I'm gonna just get them and get this little Louis apartment. Do I know what I'm gonna use it for? No, I do not, but I'm gonna get it. Look at this. What is this? Who's Silence? These are stories I've never heard of. Another thing that came up, or is coming up a lot lately, is unconscious bias. And it's crazy because I feel like it wasn't even until last year that, you know, organizations started really talking about that. And I think a lot of people still just don't get it. So earlier this week, someone made a status on SL Facebook again. I've been talking very little on SL Facebook because I feel like that's all I'm doing in real life about it.
Right.
So it's like, it's weird. I'm like, do I duplicate this? So I just keep posting in two places? But what are these? Fitting rooms. I need this. I don't know where for.
What are these?
But so everyone was asking for examples of unconscious bias because, you know, the original person who posted the status was like, I don't quite get it. And I was talking about, I feel like I've told you this because, you know, there was a point where I realized people that I work with just like instinctively don't hold doors for Black people, or they don't let them out of the elevator first. And it's like, these are people that I know. These are people that, you know, I've spent the last 5 years of my life working next to, and we've talked about our families, we've talked about race things, and it's so unconscious. They don't even notice they're doing it, and they were so uncomfortable when I told them about it. But you know, if we're in an elevator, for example, with Black people they don't know, it doesn't matter where in the elevator they are. The Black person could be in the front. They naturally expect that person to move aside and let them out first. And like, I just kept seeing it, and I'm like, this is for real. Yeah. And I was like, if you just call it out, they're not gonna know. So I remember I took a little like video of this one girl doing it, and I was like, we were on the first floor, so you didn't think she was getting out on another floor. We had just come down from 34 to 1. You didn't think she was about to stay in the elevator. You were in the back of the elevator. You pushed your way aside for her to go through. And I was like, the same thing with doors. You see a person of color, like it's less than a split of a second, but you still somewhere unconsciously make the decision not to hold the door. And there was this other situation, and I remember this girl was I need to turn off my sounds, but there was this girl that was in front of us, or what happened? Oh yeah, she was in front of us as she opened the door, and it looked like there was probably space for the girl I was with to walk through, the white girl that I was with to walk through, but instead the girl walked through the door herself. And the girl I was with was like rude, and I was like, what was rude about that? That she didn't step back and hold the door for you? I was like, I'm confused, because like it wasn't like she didn't, you know how when you like go through a door and you hold it open for the person behind you, that's what she did. But this girl was expecting her to open the door, step back, and let her walk through first. And I was like, I see it all the time. So I remember I went to travel home, and I went to the airport, and I was like, it's happening again. They don't do it. And like strangers, they look at me and do it. And it's bizarre, but it's very unconscious by a lot of people.
I remember when you brought that up.
Yeah.
And I started paying attention to things like that in my little town. And I was like, oh my goodness. I didn't realize. Didn't realize things that I had just accepted.
Right. And I think, I don't even know what I could have thought that was about before. But it comes down to this, and it comes down to, are you looking at someone and based on the color of their skin? Because we're not going to even talk about socio and economic class, because, you know, we're in a building, we're in corporate America, we're all dressed to the nines. This woman had on Louboutins in front of us in a Chloe bag. So this was a very well-off Black woman. So it's not like, you know, people like to say that, you know, we judge people based on socioeconomic, just like immediate impressions. And I was like, that's not the case here. It's literally the color of her skin. But I don't know. It's little things like that. And it's little things like that our friends do.
Yes.
Our, friends who don't mean to cause any harm, well-intended, also supporting BLM, also, making financial contributions. And I think it's just, you can't be uncomfortable having this conversation.
Right. One to have for sure. It's just one to kind of marinate, think about it.
And then become conscious. Because when I became conscious, I started seeing it. So I'm like, if I were the white person, I became conscious of that little thing, I'm going to start changing it. So you just really have to listen to people and what they're saying and what these like little micro situations are. I do like this little patio set. Where would we put this? This would be cute somewhere in Bayside. But yeah, I was like, I feel like if you're just like average person continues to understand like some of these little micro unconscious bias, then you can put into perspective, because a lot of people just can't fathom it. They can't fathom the idea that Black people are targeted by police. And I was like, I just don't think you're getting the full picture. You don't get what every single Black person has experienced. And I was that person. Remember, I used to always say like, I haven't felt any direct racism my entire life. And then, when you open your eyes to it, you're like, oh shit, this has been happening my whole life.
Right. Yes.
But I think people have to understand little small examples, and people have to keep talking about like what they've experienced in their lives. And you just have to listen to what your friends are saying, because it's really hard to understand. And I think, people are just so caught up in this idea of privilege, and people always equate privilege with money, and that's not what it is. There are wealthy Black people that still can't feel comfortable driving around in their cars. And I remember that was the case. So there was that time, I always tell you guys a story about when I was with my mom driving back from a semester in school, and we're driving a Mercedes G-Class in, rural Massachusetts. We were where we lived, and this dude was like tailing me, and what he kept doing, it was like increasing his speed behind me, so I felt uncomfortable, and I was in the right lane, so it's not like I needed to move over to the right lane and let him by, but he was just like on my ass. So finally he like comes out of the lane and goes off crazy, but at this point he had already pushed me far beyond the speed limit, because I'm like, if I don't keep moving, he's just gonna hit me. So I give this dude the finger, and I was like, fuck you, dude. And then he turns his sirens on. He was an unmarked police car, and he pulls me over, and I'm like, are you kidding me? Or what? Goodness. And like literally that was the conversation, like really just drilling into who we were, why we had this car. So I'm like, you can't even have, any type of money and be exempt to this type of stuff. I'm trying to find Ricelli because they have a real cute set. I saw in a picture.
So, okay, growing up in rural Massachusetts, did you ever get the, oh, you're not like those Black people?
Yeah.
Or, oh, we like you, you're not like them. I feel like I got that a lot.
That I didn't have, but I had lots of people who were comfortable speaking about stereotypical Black people. And I think even as a Black person, you almost feel like, I made a long post about this the other day, because I feel like there's a certain part of you that doesn't necessarily feel accepted by the Black community. And then at some point in your adolescence, you get to a point where you're like, their background's very different from my background. We're very different people. I already don't feel accepted by them. I think, when I look at who I was bullied by, it was usually people from, lower income neighborhoods that were Black. But then like as you're older, you get the psychology behind that, you know why it happened. So I ended up being around a lot of white people who were very comfortable talking about that type of black person and say, oh, well, you're not like that.
Right.
But they'll say a general statement about black people. I'm like, well, that doesn't apply to you. And I'm like, you grow up with that. And I think that's what we need to like get away from, that, you know, these conditions create, you know, what we're experiencing now, what we're talking about now is what creates conditions where there can be such disparity in communities, period. But like separating ourselves and saying it's other than because people have given us like a certain stamp of approval in some spaces, it's complicated.
It is complicated because you're either the good black friend or
But what I did experience, I remember my first year in college, I was so frustrated. And I remember because I went to the school predominantly white. I think I was probably the only black person in every single one of my classes. And, you know, naturally freshman year of college, you have all of these sociology classes and classes to spark, you know, conversation. And there were so many times where people in the class, every time something came up about black people, would look at me and expect me to like have all the answers or speak for my whole race. And I remember it was just like, so frustrating. I remember I got to a boiling point and I said something and I responded to it, and I, you know, it was directly at these people. I was like, well, you know, you said XYZ to me. I don't know why you think I can speak for my race. Said the same to the professor because the professor did it as well. And I remember that was my first time I could tell people were labeling me as this angry black person. And I'm like, but why would I not be angry about that? Like every single time something about black people comes up, you look at me and expect me to respond. And I was also a freshman in college, and I was also pretty introverted. Like I didn't want to speak, period. And now you're forcing me to speak because I'm black and I'm expected to relate to every single black person that's ever existed in history.
They just like, threw you right in.
Right. And I remember I was so mad that semester, and like that's what causes division, because naturally I didn't feel like eating with those people. I didn't want to live with those people. I didn't want to be around them or have conversations with them because I'm like, they're so close-minded. A lot of them came from neighborhoods where they've never even had a conversation with a black person. And this is 2006?
Yeah.
And like, I didn't know that existed. So naturally, I'm talking about those very specific people. But what happens is then you get this paranoia. You're like, oh, so I mean, these are, you know, there are only, like 100 white people in this class that are doing it. But you know, they're friends and they're friends. So now naturally it feels like the whole campus, all the white students are in the same mind frame. So I'm feeling a little less inclined to want to get to know them. And I think that's why I think white people are right now. They're like, you know, you guys are being racist. You're generalizing us. I'm like, we're not. I don't think it's a generalization. I think that's the assumption. We're seeing so many that believe this and so many that are surprisingly racist or surprisingly comfortable with their bias and not wanting to change it. And you're just like, are their friends? Are their friends? Where are they from? Like, all of a sudden you feel like spotlight's on you, and it's from a lot of people that have, you know, similar attributes or similar ways of thinking. All right, I had to put myself in a static pose to try this on. I can't tell if I like this lipstick or not. Like, it doesn't fit my full lips, but sometimes I'm okay with that. I don't remember which way is, like, where did we come from?
We are, okay, see. Look, I was like, we are, I don't know.
You know what else I've seen come up amidst all this? Like, someone made a post, which I just felt was in poor taste with the timing, about why he is a black man doesn't date black women. And why he had this like whole poignant, well-spoken argument about how black women don't know how to like treat their men. And it was annoying because I'm like, so what we recognize, one, naturally as black people, men and women, you're met with a certain resistance in society. What happens when you face resistance? You naturally just get stronger. We know this from fitness. You put some resistance on, your muscle's gonna build faster. So we accept and respect that with men, but at the same time, you're gonna say because of that same reason, the women aren't worthy of your relationships. And like, you know, I'm someone who's dated all types of races, and I understand like having different preferences and, you know, whatever, but I don't think I've ever said I'm not dating a black man because as the people they're like XYZ. And I feel like black men are very comfortable saying that about black women, and they're very comfortable allowing their partners to say that about black women. but just also not realizing that we're in the same resistance and struggle from both of us, but now we also get it from Black men.
That's right.
Which it's crazy to me. And it's crazy like how many people supported this post, and I thought it was disgusting. Like
And this is on SL or RL?
This is SL.
Ooh.
Like literally made a whole like post about it. And this time when we're having these conversations, that's what you want to focus on.
Right.
You want to say that Black women are less than because they don't know how to basically be subservient to you. Ugh. And tell me what about, the Black struggle should suggest that they have to be. A candle. And look at that. At least one Black avatar in the picture.
Well, let me see. Oh, that is cute. Okay, sold.
It's only $99. I feel like I'm buying the wrong thing. I literally clicked that vendor 3 times.
Boom.
I'm putting that on right now. That's my outfit for today.
I love it.
Fat pack. How much fat pack?
It reacts to SL water too. This will be fun in the ocean.
Oh my gosh, let's go splash around. Speaking of story time, so what also happened. So I'm just gonna like throw out all my examples of unconscious bias, because I think that's a huge problem because everyone has it. You just have to like keep talking about it. But remember that thing that happened at work where there was that dude that HR like wronged him, and I was saying they wronged him, but I was the face of the situation, right? Or face of the program that he came to. So me and the girl I work with were the only ones in this conference room with him where he was getting angry, and he was a big dude. He was like a big muscular dude. He was getting mad. He was standing up. He was getting closer to her. He was like punching his palm, like very aggressive. So we went up to HR and we're like, all right, we're a little nervous about our safety in the situation with this dude. He's upset because you guys did this, and we're in an enclosed room, no cameras, no one's even on this side of the building right now. And they just like kept pulling our like they at one point they asked the girl to go back down into the room and bring him over to this other executive. Like,
why would she do that?
Right. And then after all of that, they asked us to still go back down and like finish what we were working on with him in the room. And we're like, eventually, like, the outcome was crazy. Like, all the security had to come. He was batshit crazy. People were concerned he was about to shoot up the building. And I'm like, but you put us back in that situation twice. And, it made me think, I'm like, I wonder if 2 white girls from marketing came in and said this to you, if you would also tell them to go right back to that room.
No, they would have escorted him out right then.
Right.
Right then and there, no questions asked. They wouldn't even care if he really did it or not.
Right. Because there's also this just, like, perceived notion of toughness and strength that they also expect Black people to have. Like, oh, you can handle that, you're fine. That they don't expect other races to have. And that's something like people are always like, oh, but that's positive. They think you're so strong. They think you're so, you can handle it. And I'm like, no, because that's what puts us in, the face of danger quite often, because there is that assumption that we're strong enough to handle it for no reason. Because you don't know my background any more than the next person. All right, let me waddle my pregnant self around in this bikini.
In your little bikini, how cute.
Did we do the whole event? Well, first floor. It says there's a second floor.
Okay, I think there's a second floor. There's some stuff out here, too.
Okay. What are these? Are these, like, different signs? That pack?
Right.
Oh, here it is, yeah. Alright, I'm gonna walk this way. Wait, do I want the chandelier? Where am I gonna put this?
I don't know.
I feel like this might look a little better in my dining room. Oh, it's 99 London. A little silky for Alright guys, thank you so much for watching and joining us to shop Stand for Justice. Definitely come check it out. I'll put the link in the description below. It looks like this was created by Apple Fall, but there are tons of resources here on just how to further educate yourself, how to further support, places to donate. There are a couple of upcoming events in Second Life that they have on the wall behind me, as well as just some other projects that you can check out and get involved. I'm still astonished because it looks like in donations alone, they've already raised over 2 million Linden, which equals nearly 10,000 US dollars they're donating to these causes. So super impressive. Come support them, donate where you can, or just, shop, because all the donations are going to really great causes. And thank you, Raina, for joining me.
Anytime. I had fun. Great conversation.
Yes. All right, guys. We will see you guys soon. Take care.
Bye.
Yeah. Just the other day, I saw you looking my way.